Wrestling, a podcast by wrestling fans for wrestling fans. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. Welcome to a special year-end edition of the Power Pro Wrestling Podcast. This is Robert Rad.
I'm Chris Honigan. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And yes, coming up today on the Power Pro Wrestling Podcast, we discuss WWE, TNA, and Ring of Honor. Yes, you're in review for each topic, plus our top 3 candidates for Match of the Year, and we will discuss our picks for Match of the Year in all 3 companies. But we're kicking it off with Ring of Honor. And Robert, what do you think about it, my friend? Let's see what your thoughts are going towards Ring of Honor.
Well, I'm glad that we're actually starting with Ring of Honor. I know we normally would start with WWE, but Ring of Honor this year, just kind of my retrospective on Ring of Honor. It's been a good 2014 for Ring of Honor. If you look overall at the company, a lot of great things have happened. They scored their first pay-per-view in June with Best in the World from Nashville, Tennessee, not far necessarily from our recording location. They've had a lot of major stars come back. Chris Hero's come back. AJ Styles has come back. You've had Daniels come back. Kazarian's debut. There's just been a lot of great stuff that has happened this year in Ring of Honor. Kind of what's your thoughts, Mr. Heineken, on Ring of Honor?
I would say, just for this perspective, ROH has really grown as a company. I mean, from their debut on Sinclair in 2011, September 24th to be exact, all the way through till now, they have made incredible strides. They've gotten away a little bit from internet pay-per-view and finally decided to focus on television pay-per-view and rebuilding pay-per-view just on television. So I think it's been a great year for Ring of Honor, in my opinion.
Yeah, like I said, I'm in agreement. So I'll start with you, and then I'll kick it back to myself. Kind of what were some potential Match of the Year candidates, and then you can kind of give us what your pick was for Match of the Year and kind of explain why.
My top 3 candidates for Match of the Year was, of course, War of the Worlds from New York City, Red Dragon Young Bucks for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles. That was one of my top candidates. The second top candidate also was Jay Lethal versus R.D. Evans from Glory by Honor 12 in San Antonio, Texas. And my third pick for Match of the Year happens to be, I'm going to go a little bit of the route in the Road Rage edition. AJ Styles versus Kyle O'Reilly from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My winner, War of the Worlds, Red Dragon Young Bucks, match number 3 for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championships. They're my pick for Match of the Year simply for the fact that any and everything that led up to that match, from Red Dragon losing the belts in Chicago to the Young Bucks, or as we say, the Bullet Club has been on a gold rush in 2014 since AJ Styles winning the belt. I will have to say the reason why this was my Match of the Year is simply for the fact that timing is everything, in the words of Mike Tenay. And everything, timing, counter moves, I mean, just electric crowd. The crowd wasn't into anything else but this match and every single move that happened in this match. Counter move, counter hold, bar none. It was my Match of the Year. It goes to Red Dragon, which, of course, winning the championships for a 3rd time. Red Dragon, in my opinion, best tag team in the world right now. And, well, enough about me. It's shifted to you. Yo, ROH picks, as a matter of fact. Your top 3 candidates?
Yeah.
Then your Match of the Year, and why?
Yeah, well, it's not going to be surprising what my Match of the Year is. And really, I had to stop and think about what my Match of the Year is. I'm going to kind of give my thoughts on what I think Match of the Year is. is for you. You picked your match probably because of action packed and stuff like that. To me, when I pick a match of the year, it's got to be something exciting, on the edges of my seat, something that tells me a good story, which we'll get into that for TNA and WWE later on in this podcast. Obviously, R.D. Evans and Jay Lethal, strong candidate to be match of the year. Especially with R.D. Evans, the whole story going in being the new streak and potentially winning the TV title and getting screwed. That obviously has to be a match of the year candidate. Obviously, you have to look at a historic match between Jay Briscoe and Michael Elgin for the Ring of Honor title from All-Star Extravaganza 6. But really, my pick, I'm going to stick with I'm going to stick with Michael Elgin and his match against Adam Cole at Best in the World. So, I know, not surprising there, but I like it for the simple fact of the story is it was the build to Michael Elgin winning the title and the whole story surrounding that. If you go back and watch the match, I know you don't like the whole interference, but to me, it adds to the story. It's Michael Elgin overcoming the odds and obstacles being thrown into the way, starting with the Kingdom coming out, or I don't think they were called the Kingdom at the time, but having Matt Hardy and Michael Bennett coming out to try to help Adam Cole retain the title, or I think added to it, and then Maria doing that, and then Mischief, which is Elgin's legitimate wife, coming out to stop Maria, and then Elgin winning the championship. To me, that's what made it in the match of the year, was just from the story perspective of an historic. Although the Jay Briscoe match that he had later on in the year with Elgin and him breaking the curse, so to speak, and being the second person to hold the Ring of Honor title twice was historic, but I just found that I liked the match better between Elgin and Adam Cole for the Ring of Honor world title.
But there's one key element in that Michael Elgin world title win that a lot of people really, really did not see. That actually, if you watch Ring of Honor television, the episode, the preview of Best in the World leading up unto the pay-per-view, if you would have paid attention at the end of the program, it was the main reason what made this match personal and actually made it one of your top picks. Adam Cole cutting Michael Elgin's hair and putting Mischief in the figure 4 leg lock. That's what made it personal. Also, you talk about stories. Michael Elgin had the excellent, perfect game plan. And this was the best Michael Elgin-Adam Cole match that Elgin's had in years. So I will have to agree with that good point right there. But I know that's your match of the year, and I think you're sticking with it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to stick with it. Now, we've got a few minutes before we're going to go to break, and I wanted to kind of briefly touch on what do you think the future is for Ring of Honor. We're looking at the back at 2014, but let's look into the future to 2015. What do you think the future holds for Ring of Honor in 2015?
Success, my opinion. Nothing but success. They've improved their product so much. From their days with HDNet in 2009 and 2010 and early 2011 up until now with the Sinclair deal. Their product has improved so much. They're getting a whole lot of sponsors. Now all they really need to do is really, really gather more television stations than Tribune Broadcasting, and then and only then we'll see ROH really go surpass a lot of points. Other than just trying to recruit talent, they're getting television stations just like that. That's what's really helping Ring of Honor big time. And I think it's going to help them.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree. I see nothing for success for Ring of Honor in 2015. If they keep the momentum that they've gained in 2014, having their first pay-per-view in June with Best in the World, then I believe they had Final Battle that just 3 or 4 weeks ago was a pay-per-view. Did they have
awesome?
Did they have another one?
Yes, they do. It's coming up in February.
Yeah,
13th anniversary from Las Vegas, Nevada.
So I mean, I see nothing but good for Ring of Honor in the future. More pay-per-views potentially that people can buy. They keep the great matches, great talent they have potentially maybe be on national TV in the next year or two.
And they're learning. They're learning as they go. So you have to give Ring of Honor props just for learning the market and learning how to get better as a company.
Yeah, so I mean, and I see nothing but a great future for Ring of Honor if they just keep the momentum they have and run with it, I see nothing but a great, bright future.
And it's that word that we both have talked about, and that's consistency. That's what makes or break a company, consistency. And speaking of that, how about features for another great company, TNA? We'll discuss that and our picks for match of the year coming up next.
Yes, and we're going to go to a quick commercial break, guys, and we'll be back right after this.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Heineken.
And I'm Robert Red.
And we are the host of the Power of Pro Wrestling Podcast, PPWP, the wrestling podcast for the wrestling fans. We're currently looking for sponsors. If you or your business is interested in sponsorship for this podcast, you can contact us via email at jonesprowrestling@gmail.com. That's jonesprowrestling@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. So just chill out, enjoy the show, and thanks.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Red.
I'm Chris Heineken.
And our show can be heard on Stitcher. Stitcher is radio on demand.
Download the free app today.
You can listen anytime and anywhere.
Stitcher is an award-winning free app that lets you listen to all your favorite shows, plus discover from 20,000 news, entertainment, and sports shows.
You can even create custom playlists.
Over 20,000 shows to discover.
You can rate and review the show on Stitcher.
Also available on iOS, Android, Nook, and iPad.
And along with that is in 4 million car dashboards.
And it's on demand and on the go.
No downloading, no syncing, and no wasted memory.
Stream your favorite podcast.
Well, if you don't have Stitcher, you can download it free today at Stitcher.com or in your app store. And welcome back to the special year-end edition of the Power of Pro Wrestling. This is still Robert Red.
I'm still Chris Heineken, everybody's favorite cornbread. And yes, I am under average, where Robert Red is above average.
Hey, you're the cornbread. I'm just the Wonder Bread, as people like to say.
And hey, speaking of last segment, we talked about companies that were, especially for our last company that we mentioned, Ring of Honor, Nothing But Success, and we're talking about futures and year-end reviews. Let's go to this one. Total nonstop action. Let's get on down. Year-end review. Your thoughts?
Well, my analysis, whereas I talked about in the last segment, Ring of Honor being a growing, thriving company, TNA, unfortunately, this year has not really been very good to TNA in my analysis, in my year in review. They've lost a lot of mainstream talent. They lost AJ Styles. They lost Daniels. They've lost Kazarian. Hogan left at the end of last year, so they didn't have him coming in. Losing Sting in this year and him going to WWE. So this has really been a rebuilding year for TNA, and not having as many pay-per-views, losing Spike TV, going to Destination America this next year. So this really has been a rebuilding year for TNA. So, I mean, that's kind of my analysis. Kind of what are your thoughts for TNA this year?
For a great company that we're going to be discussing in the next segment, consistency and keep going is what makes or breaks companies. In TNA, with everything that you just said, which I totally agree with everything that you just said, the key to success for a company is to keep going despite adversity, against all odds, so to speak. That's what TNA has been about.
Nice referential reference there.
But in all honesty, since 2002, that has literally been TNA's big motto. And I'll give TNA credit for this. You talk about ending a relationship with Spike TV. Spike TV will, coming up at the end of this year, will end 15 years of pro wrestling on that network. TNA has had the longest run on Spike TV than any other wrestling organization, including the next company we're going to be mentioning and talking about. Granted, they've been on a rebuilding period, but guess what? They're on a network where they're really going to get some exposure. And and if you are overseas listeners, a lot of your television TNA programming, all of that programming will be shifted right here to America, courtesy of Destination America, one of the Discovery Channel's deals coming up in the month of January. Speaking of which, talk about matches.
What are your top 3 candidates for match of the year this year?
Now, for TNA, to pick some top 3 matches that were potential candidates for match of the year, obviously this and something I failed to mention in my analysis of TNA was the best thing about TNA was this past summer bringing back the 6-sided ring.
Woo! Thank you. Hallelujah.
I know both you and me were excited about that, so I mean that's something I did feel. And bringing back the 6-sided ring, I do feel brought some good matches. My potential matches of the year with the 6-sided ring, like I mentioned earlier, were Bobby Lashley had, I feel, a good match with Austin Aries. That was a potential match of the year there. Hardy, any of the Bobby Lashley matches happening and were pretty good. Refreshing my mind. Obviously, Bobby Roode and Kurt Angle from Genesis early in the year. Another great match of the year candidate. Like I mentioned, story was important. But I'm going to kind of kick off what my match of the year is.
What is it?
And my match of the year I'm going to pick, and it's going to be quite surprising because it's almost contradictory to what I said, but I'm going to explain why I picked this. Like I said in the earlier segment, I like story. Not necessarily an action guy. And I like to be on the edge of my seat. I didn't really get that feel for any matches this year in TNA, but my match of the year pick that I'm going to go for is Full Metal Mayhem. So that is kind of surprising coming from me, but my pick for that was just for the historical nature and the historical context of there. You had the Hardys, Team 3D, and the Wolves. And the whole purpose of the series of matches, which I had a good series of matches, that when you won, you got to pick the next match. It finally got to the final match for the tag titles because each team had won one. And the Wolves winning Full Metal Mayhem, and the whole purpose of them winning was to establish them as one of the great tag teams, and the Hardys already had that, and Team 3 had that, so I know why this was designed. So that's kind of why I'm picking the Full Metal Mayhem match of the year, was just for the historical context of establishing the Wolves as one of the greatest tag teams of all time. So kind of give us your top 3 runner-ups, Mr. Heineken, and then tell me what your thoughts were match of the year.
My top 3 quickly was, or may I say were, or are, as we would say in English grammar. My top 3 would be Bobby Roode, Bobby Lashley from Pennsylvania. Match number 3 for the World Championship. Match number 2, Full Metal Mayhem with, of course, Team 3D, the Hardys, and the Wolves. Match number 3, and this is pretty much throwing it out there in left field, would be the number 1 contender, 6 Sides of Steel. But my match of the year, which should be no surprise, which I am absolutely agreeing with you on this, but with a little bit of a different viewpoint. It's Full Metal Mayhem for this simple reason. Hardys, Dudleys, of course, we've known the TLC deal with Edge and Christian. They passed the torch. They passed the torch to the Wolves. The Wolves, who've already been established twice, they've been Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champs twice on 2 occasions. They've already beaten some of the best teams in the world. But for them to knock off 2 Hall of Fame teams, in my opinion, Hardys, 7-time champ, and Dudley's the most accomplished team in wrestling history and sports history, in my opinion. For them to pass the torch to the Wolves, that was bar none the most interesting of all storylines for me. All due respect to the Revolution, all due respect to Aries, who, bar none, his track record speaks for itself. And even though my shocker of the year was Eric Young winning the world title for Magnus, which I did not see coming, I still have to say Full Metal Mayhem, just for the fact that it was on your edge of your seat and some storytelling. You've already established I'm an action guy. For the fact that they passed down the torch to the Wolves made this match of the year, in my opinion. And speaking of that, what's your future looking like for TNA in 2015?
Well, I did mention this year has not been good to them, and this has been a rebuilding season. Well, if they will take the next year and rebuild and get back on track, I feel they can have a good year. They're staying on TV. Granted, it's not widely distribution as Spike TV and Destination America, but at least they're still in business. They have a TV deal. They can take that and they can grow and get back to where they were or in upcoming year. So if 2015, if they will take what they learned this last year and apply it and grow more, TNA can have a bright future. They've got the 6 sides back. If they will start producing more pay-per-views that are storyline impacting and maybe figure out a way of traveling more without going beyond their means, I feel TNA can get back on the right track and get back to the level they were and even get even better than where they were.
Future for TNA is awesome, my opinion, because you're having multiple programming on a new network that you did not have on your previous network, and here's why pro wrestling has succeeded over the years, especially with TNA. When it comes to Fox Sports Net in 2004, Fox Sports Net or the Fox networks did not have a whole lot of good drawing. When TNA entered that deal, they've added more new viewers. Spike TV has already established new viewers. They've already, especially with ECW, of course, then with WWE, and then the long run with TNA. Spike TV's, believe it or not, we can talk about the numbers all we want, but their viewership had jumped just for the fact that the 6 sides came to Spike TV. Viewership jumped. With TNA coming to Destination America, which already is closer with the similar numbers with WGN America, right around 60, 62 million homes. I think that's an excellent time for Destination America to get TNA, because that is going to expose Destination America to a lot of other cable companies and a lot of other homes, and it's going to be a whole lot available there. So I'll say future's great.
Okay, and we're going to go to a quick commercial break, and we're going to be discussing the big one, WWE, right after this commercial break. So stick with us, guys, and we'll be right back right after this.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Heineken.
And I'm Robert Red.
And we are the host of the Power of Pro Wrestling Podcast, PPWP, the wrestling podcast for the wrestling fans. We're currently looking for sponsors. If you or your business is interested in sponsorship for this podcast, you can contact us via email at jonesprowrestling@gmail.com. That's jonesprowrestling@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. So just chill out, enjoy the show, and thanks.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Red.
I'm Chris Heineken.
And our show can be heard on Stitcher. Stitcher is radio on demand.
Download the free app today.
You can listen anytime and anywhere.
Stitcher is an award-winning free app that lets you listen to all your favorite shows, plus discover from 20,000 news, entertainment, and sports shows.
You can even create custom playlists.
Over 20,000 shows to discover.
You can rate and review the show on Stitcher.
Also available on iOS, Android, Nook, and iPad.
And along with that is in 4 million car dashboards.
And it's on demand and on the go.
No downloading, no syncing, and no wasted memory.
Stream your favorite podcast.
Well, if you don't have Stitcher, you can download it free today at Stitcher.com or in your app store. And we're back with our final segment in the special year-end edition of the Power Pro Wrestling.
We're talking WWE.
Yes, and with this being the final segment, we're talking to the granddaddy of them all, if I may mention that, and we're going to be talking WWE. So let's do a quick introspective in WWE and kind of briefly tell me what your thoughts were on the company in 2014.
Roller coaster ride for WWE. Roller coaster ride. The year has all been focused on Daniel Bryan. Putting Daniel Bryan center stage, and my opinion, wrestler of the year would have been Daniel Bryan if he was healthy, but Rusev took a whole lot of spots and made good, just for the fact that he's able to help the company in that downtime, even though Seth Rollins is amazing. But your review, I have to say, just been a roller coaster ride for WWE. Sting saved Survivor Series. Daniel Bryan announcing that he's going to continue going. But good news is he'll be competing and he'll at least be another box office attraction, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm going to just use one word to describe WWE in 2014: historic. Undertaker, dude, who I have on my wall as a poster, streak ended at WrestleMania by Brock Lesnar. You mentioned Sting making his debut in the company. Daniel Bryan and Quest to the World Heavyweight Championship. Yeah, this has been an historic year for WWE in so many aspects. So, leading into that, kind of what were your candidates for the match of the year for WWE? Because I know we mentioned the Slammies and who actually won it, but kind of what I wanted to get your thoughts. So, go ahead, Mr. Heineken, your runners-up, and then go right into match of the year for you.
Well, technically, there's not really many choices because it's just been a roller coaster ride for WWE. But I will have to say, match of the year candidates was Usos and Wyatts, of course, and Daniel Bryan Triple H for WrestleMania. Daniel Bryan Triple H for WrestleMania is my winner for match of the year because Superdome was into the match. They were electric into the match. Everybody does not want to see past guys win the championship or even get a shot at the title. They want to see the newest face. Pretty much their explosion for Daniel Bryan is similar to the explosion for Chris Benoit when Chris Benoit won the title at WrestleMania 20 in Madison Square Garden, New York City. Explosion at the Superdome when Daniel Bryan won the title. Unparalleled. So, my match of the year, Daniel Bryan, Triple H. It had everything. Granted, it was opening match, but it was the best way to kick off WrestleMania.
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of do my top picks. I'm going to pick from the Slammies and stuff. Obviously, the Survivor Series match, that was the main event. Team Authority and Team Cena was a good match. It was historic. You had Sting's debut, Dolph Ziggler coming back as an underdog and winning it. It was a good match. I don't feel it was match of the year, though. Oh, the actual title match between Daniel, Randy, and Batista could have been match of the year for me for the simple fact of it was the culmination of Daniel Bryan's quest to get the championship title. But to me, it lost its believability with the whole Daniel Bryan fighting from a stretcher and stuff. So it lost its credibility and believability for me in that regard. So my match of the year is going to be, and this is where I think we're going to agree, and I'm going to echo your sentiments, was Daniel Bryan Triple H. And like I mentioned in the earlier segments, it's about storytelling. From SummerSlam last year, the Authority has been trying to stop Daniel Bryan on every twist and every turn from being the WWE World Heavyweight Champion. So him facing Triple H to get past that hurdle was just the culmination of months and months and months of build-up. Plus, to me, it was just a more technically sound match than the main event match was. Just from the storytelling aspect, and them even after the match, taking out Daniel Bryan to make us think maybe he can't compete, maybe he won't be able to make it to the main event, which we know he would, but that just that aspect of doubt thrown in there, to me, made it the match of the year this year. Now, you had a lot of significant matches that happened this year, but that was my match of the year. Now, we have talked about the future of the company, for TNA and Ring of Honor in earlier segments. So, the future of WWE obviously is NXT.
Exactly.
So I want to get your thoughts on NXT and how it's been this year, and then you can maybe tell us what your NXT match of the year has been to kind of close out this year in review podcast.
NXT. Wow. Didn't NXT have their very first primetime special of TakeOver this year?
Yes, they did. That was Adrian Neville and Bo Dallas headlining in a ladder match. So, that's a good point to bring up.
Top two candidates for match of the year. Natalya versus Charlotte for the NXT Women's Championship. And Sami Zayn, Adrian Neville from Our Evolution, which is an NXT TakeOver event from this year, by a 51-49 ratio. slightly, I have to go with Sami Zayn, Adrian Neville. But not very much, but slightly. The reason being is because other than it being action-packed and other than both these guys being world travelers, because that's what I look at. World travelers, and you're on the big stage and you're able to deliver in the main event. Charlotte and Natalya delivered big time. That's why it was so hard to pick between that match and this match, which is my match of the year. Sami Zayn, Adrian Neville, when Zayn finally won the championship, that ended up being my pick for match of the year for NXT. The future's now.
Yeah. And I mean, NXT has been phenomenal, and a lot of my friends have said they enjoy NXT a whole lot better than Raw. Like
I would too.
We were just talking to one of our past guests, Brad, yesterday, and he mentions like Raw has just kind of become bland and boring here the last few weeks, whereas NXT has always been good and always delivered. So I mean, that just goes to show you NXT has been good all year round. And when the network launched back in February, having NXT takeover, or I believe the first takeover happened back in February. You had Bo Dallas, Adrian Neville, and they that being the first live event streamed on the network, and then just NXT week after week, and then specials all 3 or 4 months out. It's just been amazing. And so it's had a great year, and I think it's going to continue to have a great year, just to foreshadow for the future. But some potential matches of the year, it's very hard to pick. I mean, the ladder match between him and Bo Dallas has been good. As you mentioned, Zayn and Neville have been good. It's hard to pick one. But mine, well, I'm going to slightly edge out Neville and Zayn and say Charlotte and Natalya match of the year. And
no argument there.
And that's strange that I would pick a women's match, considering they're mostly eye candy and stuff like that. But just the emotional investment, it being the finals of the tournament to crown the Divas Championship or the Women's Championship, with Paige having to vacate it, being on the main roster, and just the emotional investment you had in that match. And you had Brett for Natalya, Rick for his daughter Charlotte being in the corner. Just that, there was just layer upon layer, and then just how long they let them go and how talented both Natalya and Charlotte are. That was just a match of the year this year.
It was back to the basics.
Yeah, a very good match. But that's all the time we have for this podcast. Any final thoughts or words you want to leave us, Mr. Heineken, before we go off the air?
I would say the future's now, and whenever you get a chance, please just don't just watch WWE, or don't just watch TNA, don't just watch Ring of Honor. Anytime wrestling is on television, whether it's local or national, please watch.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to echo that sentiment. And like you mentioned, Lucha Underground being on.
Excellent show. Excellent.
And so, I mean, and then also Wrestle Kingdom coming up that you can pick up.
January 4th.
Yeah, January 4th. And Global Force Wrestling, Jeff Jarrett's thing is going to make it available to us. So just kind of support wrestling. And do want to thank you guys for joining us. That's all the time we have in this podcast. For Robert Red,
I'm Chris Heineken.
And we are signing off. And you guys have a wonderful 2015. And we'll catch you later.
Happy New Year!